Unless you've skipped a decade, as some of my friends appear to have done when I read the age on their birthday invitations, you kind of fail to have noticed that like an incontinent baboon on a diet of laxatives and prune curry, our species has failed the planet to the point where climate change is almost inevitable. 10 years ago, I thought this would be a good thing. The prospect of longer, hotter summers would mean more time sitting in a beer garden, and that's the only time I feel I can legitimately drink Pimm's. A decade on, and climate change has actually translated into a British summer that can be measured in hours rather than weeks. So I'm all for stopping global warming if I can continue to drink alcohol with fruit in it and not feel less of a man. So where did climate change start? Well, I blame my parents. If their wedding pictures are anything to go by, climate change was probably caused by their generation using vast quantities of CFC-rich hairspray in order to support irresponsibly big hairstyles back in the 80s. Given the trend that every generation blames the previous one, I fully expect my children to blame me for the state the planet's in. Well, quite frankly, kids, if I ever get around to having you, the planet was like this when I got here. Oh yeah, and no, you can't have that tattoo. The reality is that although industrialisation may have accelerated it, humans' influence on the climate has been going on for thousands of years, and isn't solely the fault of my platform shoot precursors. But whoever caused it, apparently it's up to my generation to fix it. Now I don't know about you, but I feel like I've turned up late to Glastonbury, discovered it finished hours ago, and been told that if I don't clear up the mess that everybody else has left, there won't be another festival ever again. It's not fair, but if I want to party next year, I guess it's time to get out the pointy stick and start spearing litter. The British government is planning to reduce the country's waste emissions by building dozens of nuclear power stations, presumably swapping out our carbon footprint for a nuclear one. Still, that's a problem for future generations to deal with. And luckily for the majority of us, these nuclear power plants will be in out-of-the-way places like Cornwall, where the mutations they cause won't show against the background deformities of inbreeding. Now, although I don't live in Cornwall, I do occasionally enjoy holidaying there, so I have an alternative suggestion that doesn't involve irradiating the pasty-eating part of the population. Countries like Iceland have solved their energy problems by building geothermal power stations. These work by drilling holes down into the earth and using the heat from the core of the planet to generate electricity. Unfortunately, until now, geothermal energy has been limited to countries near tectonic plate boundaries, where the heat from the core of the planet is closer to the surface. So since Britain isn't near a tectonic plate boundary, we can't build geothermal power stations, right? Wrong. Britain does have a source of geothermal-like energy. It's called the London Underground. I've given this a considerable amount of thought. Well, as much thought as you can fit onto the back of a beer mat after 5 pints. And if my calculations are correct, the temperatures generated down there by the millions of delayed and frustrated commuters could produce something like 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. Look, I've drawn a diagram and everything. If any politicians out there are watching this, stop spending our money on fiddling your finances. At this point I was going to add and use the public's money to put Britain back at the forefront of energy innovation, but I still can't believe that the majority of you got away with it by just paying it back. If you'd have done that in the private sector, you'd be out the door on the grounds of gross misconduct with a potential criminal record to boot. So I think the sentence stands on its own. So where else can we look for energy innovation? Well, I'm sure you've all heard of the idea to hook gyms up to the national grid. In my opinion, harnessing all that power generated by vain, sweaty health freaks sounds like a good idea to me. So why hasn't anybody done it? All it requires is a rich entrepreneur with a chain of health clubs. Your move, Ballantyne. If the growing obesity crisis this country faces is anything to go by, gym nuts only account for a small part of our society. So how do we tap into the energetic potential of the more lardy aspect of the nation? Well, what does the majority of that part of society have in common? As this is a pre-recorded monologue, let me answer that for you. Computer games. I'm sure you've all heard of motion controllers. And I'm willing to bet that you know about kinetic generators that power things like watches by the movements of your body. Well, why has nobody thought about combining these two technologies? Think of the benefits. Not only would it generate clean electricity, but it would encourage gamers to get fit, and that would cut NHS costs proportionally to the reduction in gastric band operations. Okay, so the idea won't get video game players a girlfriend, but at least they can rest safe in the knowledge that they're doing their bit for the environment while fighting off zombie hordes or competing in online virtual flower arranging tournaments. But you can't just go and leave this to the government and corporations to sort out. They come out with slogans like Plan A, because there is no Plan B. I've checked, there is a Plan B, but he's making music right now, and it's probably unfair to leave all the work just up to him. So surely the slogan should have been Plan A, because there is no Planet B. And if they can't get this right, then why trust them with the rest of it? So if you want to stop climate change, you're going to have to put in some effort yourself. And I've got a couple of suggestions that you can do from the comfort of your own homes. Now, unless you're part of the northern demographic that wears a tracksuit 24/7, you'll have to occasionally dabble in the dark art of ironing once in a while. And your average household iron is a power sink for all that electricity produced by environmentally damaging coal-fed power stations. But irons aren't the only thing that can flatten your clothes. By coinciding your ironing schedule with your daily cooking regime, you can use the residual heat stored in saucepans as a viable substitute to the conventional iron. Personally, I combine ironing with the traditional Sunday roast. And what better way to advertise your green credentials than by wearing clothing with the fresh aroma of yesterday's Brussels sprouts? Ah. What else can you do to prevent global warming and the end of skiing holidays as we know it? The answer is simple: drink. And by this I don't mean alcohol to the point where you don't care about the state of the environment. I've tried that, and you do sober up eventually. No, I mean drink the national beverage of tea. Did you know that 165 million cups of tea are consumed in Britain every day? And did you know that the power to boil all these kettles is more energy than it took to put a man on the moon? Well, me neither, but a quick wiki search resolved my ignorance. Although I did lose points in the pub quiz when they caught me looking it up on my mobile. But before you change the national beverage to wine like the French, there are alternatives that don't involve halting NASA's deep space exploration program and developing a taste for snails. Simply pop a few tea bags into your hot water tank and convert your water heating system into a big tea urn. This will allow you to enjoy a fresh cuppa by simply turning on a tap. You also get the bonus that every time you shower, it gives you a radiant tan, saving you money on expensive tanning treatments. It's not too late to stop climate change, but if we continue along this path of self-soiling, we will find ourselves stuck on a planet with an atmosphere that's like being trapped in a small lift for all eternity with a flatulent fat man. And nobody wants that, not even the fat man. So go on, give my suggestions a go and do your bit to halt global warming and save future generations from the predation of air conditioning salesmen.